Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Awakening Journey, a podcast where I invite you to join me into deep and meaningful conversations about the awakening process. My name is Milan, and I'm your host. In each episode, I invite my guests to share their most profound insight about their own awakening journey, hoping you will find here the guidance and the inspiration that you need to navigate the funky twists and turns of your own awakening journey. Today, we're launching the first episode with a very special guest, Dr. John Ryan. Dr. John Ryan is a board certified specialist physician and a professor of medicine with a long interest in spirituality, consciousness, and energy based healing. His life was transformed by a mystical Kundalini awakening in the late 1980s that led him to explore the reality of energy based healing and spiritual transformation. For over 20 years now, he has been a leader in the emerging energy healing paradigm as an energy healing practitioner and also as a counselor in support of personal transformation. He is an author, a speaker, teacher, healer, and of course, a visionary. Dr. John is the author of the book Unity Field Healing Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, as well as the founder of Unity Field Healing, a quantum-based meditative tool for well-being and also for biospiritual integration. He also channels the Syrian Blue White Collective, who supports Unity Field Healing work and humanity's ascension through DNA enhancement. Hello, John, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, Milan. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited to experience the inaugural event with you. So it's really beautiful to be here today.
Yes, I felt really honored that you were the first guest because we go back to a long time when I remember the first practitioner that registered for your Unity Field Healing practitioner training. So we will talk about that later, but this feels like extra special. I was the first one to register for your practitioner training and you're my first guest. So
A
that's
beautiful
amazing.
synchronicity.
Yeah, I love that. I just love it.
Yeah.
And reading your bio, I wanted to just say in the beginning that what I truly love and admire about your work is that you have a foot like in both worlds, in modern medicine and in energy-based medicine. And that's what we're going to touch on a little bit later, like in the podcast. But before we dive into what is quantum medicine, what is energy medicine, I wanted to rewind a little bit to the early years of your own personal awakening and look back at how it all started for you because the awakening process is so different for all of us. For some of us, it's very, very messy, sometimes very brutal. Sometimes we call it the dark night of the soul.
Yeah,
But there's also like awakening processes that are very gradual and that are steps and stones that you need to integrate and go along. And so I want to share stories about awakening processes so that people can relate and go, oh, that's kind of me. That's my kind of awakening right now, and so that they can understand their own process. So if we go back before everything got more clear, and you're at the beginning of your process, we said in the bio you had a Kundalini awakening, but can you walk us through the beginning of your journey?
for sure. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting, Milan, because when I go back in my own life, I was not really a spiritual seeker. I wasn't really looking for awakening. I wasn't really, following a spiritual path of any kind, either traditional or non-traditional. I was in university, I was studying medicine, minding my own business.
Gonna be a doctor.
And
Yeah.
I started to have experiences. And so the way it initially started for me was just these unusual things. Like I would go to bed at night and lay down, and all of a sudden I would feel like my body was filling with energy and it would begin to vibrate. And I'd feel little surges of energy in my arms and legs or in my spine. And they got stronger and, more uncontrolled in a way. It was like the energy was moving me, kind of a feeling.
Hmm.
And then one night I literally popped out of my body, like my physical body, and I had an out of body experience just hovering over my physical body. And I remember looking back and I could see my physical body the same way I would see, the screen that we're looking at right now in a physical
Yeah.
way. And but it was interesting because when you have little experiences like this, they always come with a teaching, and this is what you learn in ascension. You're you'll be guided. You'll have these experiences that will seem spontaneous or may happen out of the blue, but there's a purpose for them happening, and they have a teaching kind of encoded in
Mm-hmm.
it for you. And what I learned from this was, first, our consciousness is not limited to the physical body.
Mm.
I had never really thought much about that before. I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
didn't think it was or wasn't. It just happened.
Yeah.
But after the experience, I became very clear about that. I realized we're an indwelling consciousness. We have a soul or an energy configuration, however we want to call it. And we are conscious in the body, but the body is not our consciousness. It's more like a
Mm-hmm.
vehicle in which our consciousness lives. And so that was a very profound teaching without really thinking about it as a teaching at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But then the energy experiences grew stronger. I started to have other experiences where I would see energy sometimes, or see what I thought was a light being or an aura around a person if I was talking to them. And I was introduced, gradually into the realm of energy reality,
Mm-hmm.
or seeing energetic things that are part of our form world.
Mm-hmm.
And
How old were you, John, at the time?
I was in my mid to late 20s. And
Okay. Okay.
what's really interesting about it too is the timing, in terms of the big calendar timing, because it was in the late 80s. I was just finishing medicine. So it was like around 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, in that time frame. And but for people who've read a bit about the awakening process or the ascension, they might recognize 1987 as the harmonic convergence, which was
Mm-hmm.
considered sort of a milestone year in the ascension process. So it just was timed perfectly with that. And what happened then too was I started having memories, Milan. Like I would remember
Mm-hmm.
glimpses of other lifetimes that I felt I had lived. I would remember things I knew as a child but had forgotten as an adult. Like
Yeah.
as a little boy, I remember being very clear about two potential futures for the planet, and we wouldn't know until later which one the Earth was going to experience. And but I remember having those awarenesses as a young boy.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, so one thing led to another. And as these kinds of experiences grew stronger, I didn't really have a frame of reference for them. Like I didn't know anybody who did Kundalini yoga or
Especially like back then. Now with
exactly.
internet, like you
Yeah.
can Google, I move, my body move on its own. You can Google something, you know.
It's
But
all
back
there
then,
now.
yeah, it's all there. There's lots of people talking about it. It's more open. But
Yeah.
like when it started for you, like it was really the beginning of it, the beginning of the awakening, with like from the mass population was going to transition towards that, but you were at the beginning, so then understanding what's going on is much more difficult.
Yeah, it was very challenging. And it actually got to the point where I became concerned. Like I started to think, is
Oh,
something wrong with me? Because I didn't really have a frame of reference for understanding it at all.
yeah,
And
yeah. Especially being in medicine, like, and with the
that's right.
rational mind and the science mind, and it's like, what is happening to me?
Exactly.
Am I
Exactly.
losing it?
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
that's where I went. I started to think, is something wrong? Do I need to have a scan? Do I need to be worked up for medical issues? But there was this tremendous reassurance that was part of the process. Every time I would start to get afraid or worry,
Mm,
I would feel this cloak of comfort. It was almost like this energy hug or this sense of an embrace that would happen. And it would kind of let me know that it's all okay. There were no words spoken. No
mm.
one was saying anything in my ear or anything like that.
Yeah, you don't have a guide following you in the house saying everything's fine.
Not at all.
Not yet, not yet. Later, maybe.
Stay tuned.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but what happened was I woke up one morning and I had this really profound intuition. Like it was this driving intuition that just said, you need to go to this bookstore. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a bookstore in the city where I live in Ottawa in downtown area. It doesn't exist now, but it was here then. And I'd never been there. So I thought, well, okay, it just wouldn't leave me alone. So I eventually found myself in the car and I was driving there and I walked in the store and I was overwhelmed. I walked, it was like an old, like a little mansion style of a house. And there, each room had a different category of books related
Mm-hmm.
to mostly, there wasn't a lot of books on energy and healing at the time. It was mostly about like Eastern spirituality or,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
other forms of non-traditional spirituality to the Western world, shall we say, or holistic healing. And there were some early books on channeling and crystals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I walked into the store and I thought, how am I ever going to find what I'm looking for in here? Like it was really an overwhelming sensation. And as I looked around the store, there was a book that began to glow like it had a light in it.
Mm.
And I walked over and I took the book off the shelf and it said, the title of the book was The Spontaneous Awakening of Kundalini by Gopi Krishna.
Oh, wow.
And I started reading the book and it was describing things that I was experiencing. And I thought, oh my word, like I was just overwhelmed with gratitude because I thought
Mm-hmm.
this is the answer I'm looking for. But how would I ever have known to look for it? Like I wouldn't even have known the book existed. So how would I know to find it?
Yeah.
And so
You
another
were deeply guided, eh? Like that's
exactly
from the beginning, you were deeply
a
guided. You
hundred
just have,
percent.
and you were listening. That's what is coming to mind, John, because a
Yeah.
lot of people listening maybe have this voice inside of them, or there's this hunch or this little something that says, like, you should do this, or,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily listen to it. And from what you're sharing, that's what I hear. You were guided, but you were also listening.
And it's what's so important because we're not
Yeah.
used to operating in that way
No.
until we learn to do it or we're reminded to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's so important what you're saying, Milan, because that's really what happens is you transition into this kind of energy consciousness world is a lot of your guidance is very personal to you and it will be guiding you in a very specific way and it has to come from inside you. And so you have to develop an ear for hearing your intuition or seeing the promptings that
Yeah.
your own soul is guiding you towards and learn to listen and follow through on the information
Mm-hmm.
that you have from that space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's we're very linear traditionally and
Yeah,
so we have our
very.
to-do
And
lists.
we're so conditioned, even as children, to not listen to this, like,
Correct.
because it's very confronting to the environment. Because some children will see energy or have like a really clear understanding of the reality,
Yep.
but the adults have like now the filters and the conditioning and the social conditioning, and it's sometimes hard for the adults to assist their little ones like into listening to that voice, because they don't even listen to their voice. They were taught to not listen to it. So
Right.
listening to that voice is like, it's a process, like just that, it's a process to learn, to relearn to listen to the voice, eh?
Yeah, 100%. And you bring up another really important point, which is children, because so many people experience this in the context of unusual experiences with their children. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so in learning not to shut them down, you also have to learn to be open yourself. And so
Yeah.
you're going to experience that healing, if you will,
Yeah.
in the process of the encounter with your child. So it's
Yeah.
a whole other level of a discussion that we could have.
Yeah, it's like awakening backwards.
Exactly.
You're awakening through the awakening through your awakened child, because
Right.
the children are coming now and they're so awakened and they
100%. Yeah.
remember. They remember where they're from, and
Yeah.
they remember their true essence, and they don't they will not go into the same survival as maybe I did or you did,
Yeah.
to adapt on this earth. Like their design is is more awakened than our design. So
Yeah.
so the
They,
parents are learning through the children to
a hundred
awaken.
percent. They remind like it's kind of a reverse process, like you said, but it's kind of by design because
Mm-hmm.
the kids become triggering for the parents
Yeah,
to
yeah,
remember. But the kids are really wired up in a way where it's harder to deprogram them. It's harder to
yeah,
impose filters. It's like they have a
yeah,
resistance to it. And it's
yeah.
a
Yeah.
powerful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was certainly the resistant, the resistant kid. It's like very challenging for my parents. Now that I look back, I was like, oh, that was it. Like a part of me just didn't want to let go something I knew inside, and so I look like a very rebellious kid or a very
Exactly.
difficult teenager. But
Exactly.
looking back now, I understand that a part of me was really trying to awaken, and I was like in a family where it was challenging for them. So.
Right. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of kids can identify with that today, I'm
Yeah, for
sure.
sure, eh? For sure. I love the story about the book because I can understand that if you see a book flashing at one point, you're thinking, "Am I going to go for a scan? Like, is something? What's going on?" You know. But then you trusted the process, and what happened when you started reading a little bit more on it? Like, how did you move on from that first milestone to where you are at today?
What began to happen was it opened a whole awareness of the energy world by
Mm-hmm.
the experience itself. But then as I started to read and I became familiar with the Eastern concepts of Kundalini, and then that led me to the chakras and, of course, the whole energy, human energy system. And because I was having these little glimpse experiences of seeing energy, I realized it's all true. Like there was just no doubt left in me because
Mm,
I had lived enough myself to know there was a reality to what was being said. So it wasn't just textual information, it was experiential information. And I think that becomes really valuable in ascension
yeah,
work or healing work because it confirms to you or supports you, in overcoming the doubt or the faith that would be such a natural
yeah,
hindrance, in that.
yeah. Oh, that's so true what you're saying because when people don't experience it, it's like they're trying to understand it from their mind,
Right.
and it's like, okay, does this exist? Is it possible? Is it really a thing? But when you live it, it's like the other way around. You try to figure out with your mind, what is this? But you have like the experience, it's real. So once you find a book that corroborate maybe what you're
Mhm.
going through, you're like, ah, and it's easier to allow it to happen. Otherwise it's just the mind, and the mind is we're so the modern the modern man is so rational that
Yeah,
sometimes he forgets that there's other muscles
that's right.
inside of his conscious being. It's not the only muscle.
That's
It's a
very
really
true.
good muscle. It's an amazing muscle, but it's not like the only one.
That's so true.
So yeah, having both of it, it's really what gets you out of the doubt, because I think a lot of people in the awakening process really are struggling with doubt. I think that's such a very important theme that you're naming,
Yeah.
especially when there's no one around you to talk about it, to process it. Sometimes, like we are like pathfinders, or we open new paths in our families, and
Yeah.
there's nobody to like talk to it, talk to about the process about it, and then you start doubting
Yeah.
what you feel, what you hear. And that's why it's so important to have like people share their experience so that we know it's okay, and we don't have to doubt. It's our truth, it's our spiritual truth that is ready to open up.
Exactly. And I mean, every element of it has an important instruction in it. Like just the ability to have an experience that another person can't possibly understand. And if
Mm.
you tried to listen to someone saying it to you just 2 weeks ago, you'd have a hard time imagining, believing what they're saying, perhaps.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but you have to learn how to navigate the courage to still be
yeah.
true to yourself and overcome your own doubt. And all of these things are stepping stones on the path. And
Mm-hmm.
they all teach you and remind you about going back inside, understanding the truth
Yeah,
from an in out perspective as opposed from an out in perspective. And that reversal of consciousness, that reversal of
yeah.
living is a fundamental part of the whole process in every way.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about taking responsibility for our lives. It's about understanding our spiritual essence and how it's the guide in our world. And if we listen, we learn to manifest reality from that perspective outward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the greatest compass that we hold to help
Yeah.
us navigate experiences and so forth. And and how to be that in the face of adversity or opposition and have courage and tenacity that's common to the soul, but not always common in a human being.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I just love you talk about courage because I think it's such like at the core of the awakening process.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to, my guides often teach me like it's time to let go all of the other worlds except your inner world.
Mhm.
So you have to let go of the conditioning and that takes a lot of courage to let go of everything to really bloom from the inside.
Yeah.
And you don't know, like when you let it go, that it's going to be incredible and magnificent and just wow, wow, wow. And
Yeah.
sometimes messy, I have to say.
Exactly. And it's not always
But
wow,
you
wow,
don't know.
wow.
Wow, wow,
Sometimes it's, oh
pow,
my
pow,
God, what
wow,
have I
wow.
gotten myself into?
Yeah, why did I open this door, and you want to put everything back. I know that when I guide people, the courage that it takes
Yeah.
to really follow your own voice is a really challenging aspect. So it brings me back to like another question I wanted to ask where well, maybe it's not the case, but you let me know if it's not. But I imagine being like in modern traditional medicine, it must take even more courage to like have yeah, the courage to open like a new kind of healing where you can face judgments, where you can face misunderstanding, rejection from your colleagues. Like, that's, oh, I lost you on the camera for a couple of seconds. So yeah, I'm wondering like what kind of courage did it take you? I know that for me, courage was a big part of the awakening because I really had to leave relationships. I had to leave. I was teaching in the university. I left that. Like I left friends. Left my family. I left like so many things. And I'm not saying to people listening, you're gonna have to do this.
Mhm.
It's not you have to leave it, but through following my own voice and having the courage, it was like, this doesn't fit me anymore.
Right.
And so I'm wondering from you, being like, I tell my friend, he's a real doctor. So, before he does the energy medicine, he's a real doctor. So, how did you have the courage to be in both worlds and open up both and still navigate both simultaneously, even though we can imagine there must be friction or challenges when it comes to that?
Well, there for sure there is, and it is certainly part of the process. But
Mm-hmm.
what I found happened, Milan, for me personally, was I'd live a level of an experience, and I would get comfortable in that space. And so, for example, I began, seeing energy and things. I began learning about energy. I had a personal, powerful healing experience using energy medicine. And so all of these things were kind of reinforcing my experience and teaching me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to a place where I felt well footed or grounded, I guess, in the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And so that
Yeah.
gave me a level of acceptance.
Yeah.
And then then I was a little more public about things at that point, like people would know I do workshops or that I do,
Mm-hmm.
teaching seminars. But unless people asked, I didn't say too much about it unless it was the
Mm-hmm.
environment where I would say something about it.
Yeah.
And then, but slowly as time moved forward and I began to get inner teachings about the unity field healing work and things, it became quite public because people were having their own very personal and powerful experiences. And people knew I was a physician and they would sometimes bring my book to their physician and they would start,
Oh,
sharing
nice.
their experience. And of course, many of them are colleagues in my own.
Oh, yeah.
So they would say, oh, yeah, I do know him and blah, blah, blah. And so there was kind of a reveal that took place, I guess, in that process.
Mm,
And,
yeah.
but it was very interesting. I found people, for the most part, were very kind of in two camps. I guess people were either interested and curious, or at least pretended
Mm-hmm.
to be.
I love
And then
that.
there were people,
Respectful.
yeah, but people who thought it was perhaps too much or silly or whatever
Yeah.
really had a respectful silence. They didn't judge it
Mm,
overtly or anything.
mm-hmm.
They just thought, and even with their patients and things, they would say, if this is helping you in your process, that's wonderful. That's really great. They might not
Mm-hmm.
go any further than that in their own belief system,
Yeah.
but they didn't deter a whole lot. And
Mm.
so it was smoother than I imagined. Now, of course, there's
Wow.
little experiences here and there where that were a little bit more adversarial or judgmental or what have you. But for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
it was really very much like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always amazed how open-minded people really are
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how willing to entertain foreign ideas they are and how curious they are and how
Mm-hmm.
loving people can really be. And so
Yeah.
the experience was much more positive than I would have ever imagined in my deeper fears,
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so my imagination would be worse than the real experience of,
Yeah.
of what it was.
We can all relate to that.
And but then with each next step in the process, each next level of integration, it got a little bit easier. But the big
Yeah.
step for me was when I started to channel information. Like that was
Yeah.
it was so strange for some reason, talking about energy and chakras and healing and all of that just seemed okay for some reason at the point I had
Mm-hmm.
arrived at my life. But when the Syrian beings came and wanted to start channeling, I that really threw me for a loop. I kind of thought, I
I
can't,
didn't sign
I
for that.
I can't go that far.
Yeah, yeah, because you still teach in a university, you
Yeah,
still like in the medical field, and
correct.
so you were. Oh, I love that you're sharing that because I I I think that when we look at leaders that are leading the way of awakening, we sometimes don't imagine that they were fearful or resistant or insecure about the next step. And I always share that with
Mhm.
my clients and the people I assist and my students in my school. I'm like, I'm sometimes like not sure I want to open this. Like my higher self wants to do it, but like my human being is like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like so I like when you talk about the fact that you were like, no, I'm not sure I want to do this, or I want to keep it private. I'm not going to go public with this. I'm not going to put it on YouTube. I'm just going to keep it.
Exactly.
So so maybe we can go through this process, John, because you're saying there's so many steps. You didn't channel the Syrians right from the beginning. It was like a gradual process. And I even remember when I did the training with you for Unity Field Healing,
Mhm.
you didn't really channel messages at the time. It arrived like you channeled like the energy and the template, but you channeled the messages like step by step. And that's a point that I want to make with the podcast. It's like it's gonna unfold step by step. Like
Yeah.
we're rarely like an Eckhart Tolle or a Byron Katie, like overnight everything is
Yeah.
open.
That's
We
right.
do it step by step. So, but sometimes we imagine like the person that is there channeling the Syrians is like it was not a challenge for this person. So how did you walk? Like, can you walk us through the process, like of how did it begin?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm very visual, and I know as an artist you'll relate to this. I'm very
Yeah.
visual in my experiences, and that was true also in my awakening. Like a lot of things that would come to me, or experiences that I would have, or teachings sometimes that I would receive, would come in the form of visions. I would see
Yeah.
very specific geometrical patterns, for example, or I
Mm.
would be shown a geometrical pattern that was working in a way in the energy field, and so on.
Mm.
And that's how a lot of the information that led to unity field healing came.
Mm. Like on an inner screen, eh, John? Like when you say
A
you're
hundred
visual, it's like,
percent, yeah.
we can remember our childhood like on an inner screen. So that's where you would see the information.
Exactly. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes very vividly, even like we can see it, we can imagine things in our mind and see them in a certain way. But when you dream at night, it's so real and vivid. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the visions almost had that quality to them, like they were
Yeah.
really vivid and happening.
Yeah. And you're not the one imagining like it's happening. Eh? It's like
Correct.
it's running like a movie and you're discovering it all the way along. You're not the one forming
Correct.
the image.
Truly
So
just
that's big.
observing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Receiving the thing and trying to figure it out.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I would be seeing visions and things. And then it was interesting because I learned about how spirit kind of communicates, I guess, in a sense, because I would see these visions that had symbolic elements and very precise content that when I looked at it had a meaning transcendent to what I was seeing. Like, to give you a
Mm-hmm.
name, just trying to think of an example. Like if I would see a bird, the bird would be to the left. It would be the color blue. It would be high in the screen. And the position of the bird would have a meaning. It meant that it was
Mm-hmm.
overseeing something or part of an oversight process. Like every little detail in the
Oh
picture
yeah.
would start speaking in a certain way. And so when people who've done shamanic work, if anybody, has participated in shamanic work, they'll understand this because when you go into a shamanic journey, it's very much like that. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you encounter a spirit animal or if you get a guide or you come across something you're healing, there may be a vision and all the details will keep talking to you or have messages, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the teaching came in that form, and I had to kind of
Yep.
integrate it and then turn it into something that I could express in words
Mm.
or in sharing. And so
It was
that,
almost like a metaphor or like a
correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yeah. And so a lot of the unity field teaching came in that form at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the process at that level. And then all of a sudden, one day I was in a meditation in a group and the Syrian beings came into my mind's eye and they presented themselves inside my head through
Mm-hmm.
the third eye screen.
Yeah.
And I could see them, and they came as a ball of light, like a big ball of blue light. And then the light kind of fanned out like an array. And
Mm.
out of the light, it was like they were literally emerging out of the light. I could see light forms that looked like beings. And they gave me their name right away. They said that we're the Syrian Blue White Collective. But what was really powerful, Milan, was the way they came actually showed me how they work because if you think of the term Syrian Blue White Collective, they came as a unity field. They came as a
Mm.
light field. And then they all
Yeah.
came out of their little individuated beings, but then they went
Yeah.
back into this field of light.
It's almost like a plural being that can be like in individual form.
Correct. It's a beautiful expression. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. A plural being. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they showed how they work as a cohesive unit, but they have an individuated aspect as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think as humanity, that's kind of where we're evolving into. I think that's the way
Yep.
higher civilizations operate. So
Yeah.
they presented, and the reason they came forward at that point in time in this vision was they said they wanted to kind of take work to another level and that there were a significant number of human beings undergoing the ascension process and they want to support us. They want to kind of be there in a really supportive way. And the easiest way to do that is through direct transmissions. And so
Mm.
it was the beginning of what became known as the Syrian blue white transmissions.
Yeah.
And the after that, they've come to me in vision a few times, but normally I feel them more than see them. They'll show up in
Mm.
my vision every once in a while, but it's often more a feeling. But when they come into to co-experience something, like when they're working with us in a meditation or a transmission, we begin to feel their energy and their presence in a really powerful way.
Mm.
And so you start to
Yeah.
realize that all of these forms of communication, support, sharing, healing, they come in many forms. And that's how humans experience it. Some people are very visual, some are very tactile and sensory, some are very cognitive. They will receive packages of information, like a whole description of things. And some people will feel energy presence and very sentient to
Mm.
it, and so on.
Yeah.
And so we need to realize there's not one way that people have these. Sorry, I said Siri and my computer thought it said Siri.
Zero.
The Syrians are coming in.
That's so funny.
So they're trying to interject.
Yeah, for sure. They're more than welcome. I could feel them in the studio before arriving. I asked that we would be guided by them for the
Oh, you just
interview,
got
and
your
all,
confirmation.
yeah, by all the multidimensional beings that assist me and that assist Earth. So that's amazing. Thank
That's
you
really
guys for saying hi.
that's cute. So, but I share that mostly to expand people's understanding because, you'll hear of one person who receives energy or information one way or another way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different from one person to another. There'll
Yeah,
be certain aptitudes or strengths that
yeah,
are unique to each individual. And
yeah.
so some will relate to visual, some will relate to auditory, some will relate to sensory and cognitive and so
Mm-hmm.
on. And
It's so it leads me to like talk about the body
okay.
because you say like I feel the Syrians
Mm,
more than I see them.
okay.
And when I guide processes with my student, I always come back to the body because when the body is in survival mode, it doesn't hear much, it
Yeah.
doesn't see much, it doesn't feel much, it cannot interact with other dimensions. So there's a part of like the body that is so important in awakening. I call it like the spiritual, the somatic aspect of spirituality, where if your body is always under stress or there's a lot of trauma or like it's always tight, you won't be able to feel that. Or if you're in fear mode all the time, you will fear, and it's not the same layer of consciousness. If you are immersed in a fear layer, like a vibration of fear, you won't be able to hear higher beings, other dimensions. And so I always guide the process from the body and how we can assist the body through the ascension. Of course, we see things, of course, we hear things, but we are sentient beings. And I think that's our biggest tool, to be able to feel. And when feeling is associated to something scary, or it's associated to I might be in danger if I feel, or I'm gonna be so different from society that people are like not feeling or trying not to feel. And I always teach the process of like almost re-educating the body to feel and to feel safe so that we can connect with other dimensions, because it's the epicenter of it all, ascension. And that's what drew me to your work from the beginning when you talked about quantum DNA. I remember, John, I didn't even know what it was. I just received the email. I didn't read. I just clicked registered. I saw quantum DNA and I just clicked registered. Had no clue. I knew who you were as a person, and I was drawn to just your energy. It was crystal clear. I could feel it. I didn't even need to read like what you were offering. Like I just clicked, and I remember we could see how many people registered and I was the first one. I was like click. I got the email, click. But because a part of me just knew that I needed assistance with my own body, and that's mostly why I registered. I needed assistance for my body to be able to channel higher vibrations. And I often share that. I come from a background where there's a lot of trauma and challenges and transgenerational pattern, and I needed the support of your approach so that my body could release all that survival pattern
Yeah,
and be able to tap into my higher self. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that, about the body and what is the quantum DNA and why is it so important to
sure.
assist the body in its process.
Well, what you're saying is so, so, so important. Like I can't emphasize strongly enough because
Mm-hmm.
when we speak of ascension and spiritual things, there's a psychological tendency for us to lift off. We think about
Mm-hmm.
ascension as almost like we're getting out of here or we're,
Yeah. We're
getting
going
over
somewhere else.
it.
We're done with it. We're done with Earth.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
especially if life has its share of trauma, even historical trauma, just
Yeah.
rooted trauma or, ancestral trauma within the quantum fabric.
Yeah.
There's this sense of wanting to get over it or get through it or get away from it.
Yeah.
But ascension is the process of integrating higher energetic aspects. And so the body is the anchor point. It's the core
Yeah.
of the whole process, just like you said. And
Yeah.
so we can, if we learn ascension things, but we don't integrate and we don't bring the energy down through the form of the body, it's just an education. It's not the
Yeah.
same as an experiential process.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when the Syrians came at the time, this is really what their focus was. It was to help
Oh.
people bring that energy into the form.
Mm.
That's what the transmissions have always been about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made sense to me after experiencing it with them for a little while they were so keen on helping us achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
And because what happens is, as you integrate your power, as you integrate your spirit, as you integrate that light and the whole working body of crystalline energy that's part of it, your your human potential changes. Your
Mm.
all the things we're trying to achieve become integrated. You know, we speak of courage, we speak of healing, we speak of um, co-creative ability, listening to our spirit, and manifesting and creating from the space of spirit into the world, kind of thing. All of this is enhanced and empowered by the
Yeah.
integration. And so everything that blocks that or is blocking it here, in any way, shape, or form through fear
Mm.
or other forms of memory or consciousness has to
Yeah.
kind of be cleared out in the process. And so there's this transient process where we kind of have to go through these layers or through these emotions just
Mm-hmm.
to let them lift or kind of remove them or heal them. But
Mm-hmm.
integrate them is really a better word. And
Mm-hmm.
then that allows us to be more fully embodied. And so the key of ascension is deeper integration. It's really not about going higher, it's about
Yeah.
integrating deeper. And as we do that, then our connection, the stability of our connection, what we might say is a higher realm or a higher vibration,
Yeah.
is stabilized in the form. And so
Mm.
that's really what is happening as we go through the healing journey. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people who are beginning ascension, at the beginning, it's healing. It's all for everybody, it's healing. It's all about healing.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning energy healing. We're
Yeah.
learning how to heal in different ways, overcome
Yeah.
ancestral memories or release trapped emotions, or sometimes the experience of emotions lived in other incarnational experiences, what we might
Yeah.
call past life memories and things.
Yeah.
And so, but as we release those energies, then there's a fluidity that develops in the energy and a
Mm.
strength that develops in the energy that
Mm-hmm.
makes the ability to go forward easier. And
Mm.
then all of that is just a preparation for what the ascension brings to us. It's all of that is part of it's the bridge of transition, if you will, the healing bridge of
Mm-hmm.
transition. And as we stabilize in those energies, then we become more aware of what it's like to live in that new space, to live as a
Yeah.
conscious spiritual being, to live as someone who understands their self responsibility, as someone who understands
Mm-hmm.
their power to heal and transform, or to
Mm-hmm.
bring light and healing to the world in different ways.
Mm.
And so, as we each anchor in that space, we become a person who, by nature of design, this is just how the whole universe is made.
Yeah.
As we stabilize in that space, you turn
Right.
into service. You turn to service in
Yeah.
some way because you then are, as you're holding the space of what you're creating, it becomes a focal point or a way shower or uh, someone who can help another person make
Mm.
those same transitions and changes. And
Mm-hmm.
so, everybody on the light worker path, so to speak, is doing that in some way. And
Yeah.
that's really what
Yeah.
we all experience as we go deeper into it.
Mm.
And as we heal at that level, the body goes through a whole array of experiences. And so some of them are not as easy as others. Some of them are very
Yeah.
challenging in different ways. And on an emotional level, just releasing emotions or surfacing emotions to let them move, but also the
Mm-hmm.
body has to get comfortable carrying a different kind of physical
Yeah.
quantum energy. And so you
Yeah.
have to learn how to really be with your body in a conscious way, how to listen to feedback from what you're
Mm-hmm.
eating or not eating, what you're doing or not doing, what you're
Yeah.
participating in or not participating in.
Yeah.
And all of that becomes guidance in
Yeah.
the process. And
Yeah.
at the beginning that can seem annoying and restrictive. Like
Yeah.
one thing I really had to do was learn how to slow down. And so, for
Mm.
example, if I kept going too fast, I would get spun up. And it was almost like I was a light bulb. Like I would feel like all this energy was here and I
Mm.
was tethered with my
Mm.
feet. And I would have to learn how to slow down and let the energy come back down again. And
Oh yeah,
if I,
that's a big one for me too.
yeah, and if I didn't do it, I'd get really out of sorts. I'd get really
Yep.
dizzy. I might fall down. I might, physically get unstable, and certainly
Yep.
emotionally, I'd be more, quick to react, or I could be
Mm-hmm.
triggered by something, and all of it was from imbalance. So you had to learn how to carry
Mm-hmm.
the energy in a new way. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody gives us user manuals to know how to do.
Well, that's what we're trying to do
The
here.
lawyer
Like,
now.
but like everybody has a different user manual.
Correct.
As we said, everybody awakens differently. So
Correct.
I remember when I started awakening, like I was maybe 16 or 17, like when it started, and I would visit like all the energy healers that I could find in the back alley of the village. I would just try to like figure out what was happening and multiplying the appointments with the psychics and trying to figure out. And they would always tell me, so you're psychic. And I was like, no, 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 you're psychic. Like I'm I'm not psychic. I didn't understand what they were saying. But the thing I wanted to ask is like, how did you start to see these beings? How did you open up that dimension? Like, I was so curious about that, even more than the reading like they would do to me. I was hoping, like, at the end, like the five last minutes, I could say, like, how did it all start for you? That's the question I wanted to ask more than anything. I was curious about the process from the beginning, and I wanted to understand, like, oh, this is what happened to him. Oh, and this is what happened to her. And even though all the stories are different, there's like an interconnectiveness at some point that you understand, oh, I have to trust my guidance. that's
Exactly.
the oh, that's how she trusted her guidance, and oh, that's how he trusted his guidance. And that was really like I was like trying to get all the pieces in my little bag to like, okay, how did he do it? Okay, that's not for me, that's not what I'm gonna do,
Mhm.
but this is for me. And trying to figure out like the process, because it's yeah, we don't have the manual.
No, and you touch on
Yeah.
something really important. And it took me a while to learn this too, because by nature, I mean, being involved in traditional education and medicine, like I'd spent my whole life studying, and it was all about
Mm,
intellectual things
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff and research and you name it. And
Yeah.
then to be in a space where if I was challenged with a problem, my natural solution would be to solve it through my mind to begin like, what do I do? How do I do? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you have to learn in stepping into this kind of realm of being that the answers don't come in that same linear
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And so the paradox of it is, in order to learn more, you almost have to let go more or do less.
Yeah.
You have to release, because the mind is wonderful at spinning stories and coming up with
Yeah.
new
Reading a new
approaches,
book,
reading another
listening to a new
book.
podcast. Yeah, that's
and
so true.
and it'll kind of spin us for a while, and that's
Yeah.
part of the awakening. It's a natural part, and everybody goes through that to some degree, but you
Right.
get to the point where you realize I just have to slow down and still. I have to be still.
Yeah.
And I mean, that may mean meditating for some people, but it may also just be mean being in nature, or being in a
Yeah.
quiet environment, or like, or doing creative things where your mind goes into,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
right brain, and you're in a different space. And you have to find the way that works for you to be in a place where you're receiving energy and
Mm-hmm.
information in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
so people who are kind of at the beginning of the process, or perhaps just experiencing their own openings and things, I think those words are very important. Like, just find the way to be with yourself that allows things to emerge, that allows
Mm-hmm.
creativity to bubble up, that allows insight to bubble up. And you'll
Mm-hmm.
be amazed how precise what happens for you is. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is, when we look back retrospectively, I always say this to people when I'm teaching, I could never have planned anything I lived.
Mm,
that brought me to what I understand today. None of it was anything I knew. So if I relied on my mind to get there, I would always be getting in my way because I would think I have to know the answer, but I couldn't know the answer.
mhm,
And so we have to think that way, have to get out of our
mm.
way and let
Yeah.
intuition guide, let synchronicities unfold, let that kind of process be the way it awakens. And then when you look back, you realize how utterly precise everything
Mm,
you've lived was,
mhm,
specifically for one reason or another that was instrumental on bringing you to where you arrive. And
mhm.
you cannot understand that with foresight. You can only understand it
Yeah.
retrospectively. You'll look back
Yeah.
and you'll see the truth of it. But in the process, it doesn't always feel or seem like that at all.
Yeah. It's an understanding that comes from the heart, eh? Like the heart brain.
Totally.
We're not now talking about the heart brain and the research is
Right.
happening around that, but
Right.
that's what I find that we have to let go of the mind, and there's almost like another mind.
Yeah.
Not it's not there's another layer of consciousness behind the mind,
That's right.
and it comes from the heart, but it comes back to what I was saying, to the body and being in the body,
Yeah.
being there in the body.
Yeah.
And I want to share a really deep insight that I had with while I was doing a session with you, like many years ago when you were still doing sessions.
Okay.
My guides told me it's not ascension, we should call it descension. Like almost like you're descending into your human being,
Yeah.
and you're going to integrate the divine part into the human being. So technically, I remember the image, they flipped everything upside down. Remember, I was crying, it was so intense. And then I saw that and I was like, oh, it's not ascension, it's descension. So the thing is like descending, and I have to integrate it in my body.
A
So,
hundred
so that
percent
I
correct.
still remember this
That's
insight.
amazing. I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, and I still teach that today. I'm like, it's not really ascension, it's descension. But like elevating the human form with its divine essence,
Yeah.
instead of being in the survival mode in the body,
Yeah.
and then the essence is like somewhere out there waiting to have space to descend. So,
It's really, really
oh,
beautiful because we
mm,
realize that as we go through this process, what you start to understand fundamentally is that we're living in a world where we forgot our divinity. I mean, that's a simple way of
yeah,
saying it.
yeah, yeah,
And as you are integrating this energy, this descent of energy, as it's coming and integrating into the body,
yeah,
it's lifting the body. Where the vibration goes up is in the
yeah,
body, but it can only happen
exactly.
if the energy comes down. And
Yeah.
so it's really important, and it can't be overstated how important what you're saying is, because
Mm,
it's the if for example, if a person's going through a healing process, the healing comes from the spirit. And we lived in a world where we forgot about the spiritual power, where we forgot about the spiritual connection in different ways. We thought
mm-hmm.
it was something we could only achieve through a third party or through an
Yeah,
institution or these kinds of
yeah,
things,
yeah.
and or through the benevolence of grace that we didn't deserve.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
that's so
so
true.
so when you start to understand this integration, you realize we're all worthy. We're misinformed in a way. It's like we're living in a reality that is not completely legit. We have to overcome that barrier
Mm,
and reunite. It's a integration with the soul. And people would sometimes say,
mm,
we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I love that expression because
mm-hmm.
historically would be human beings looking for a spiritual goal,
Mm,
to be blessed or to receive a healing from spirit outside of us. But as you go through this process, you realize it's removing the veils to that understanding and that belief
mm,
to allow it to happen inside. And so
mm.
everything ultimately comes through that form, through that integration. And
Oh yeah.
so it's truly body based. Your body is the
Uh,
epicenter of the whole ascension
of the whole thing, eh?
journey.
And the whole point is to be human. It's
Correct.
not to be spiritual. It's like to be human,
Yeah,
but beyond the survival, beyond the fear. So,
correct. That's right.
so John, time is flying by when we're talking. I could go for another hour, so I think I might invite you for another hour down the road. But I would like before we conclude the interview, for you to just like maybe explain a little bit more what is unity field healing, what's the approach, and if people feel called to connect with you in this way, they understand a little bit better because we dived into the podcast. We know the language, we know each other.
Mhm,
It's like but we didn't explain everything, and
mhm.
that's okay. But now I'm thinking maybe we could take a little bit of time just to say like, what is unity field healing, and how does it work, and if people are attracted to this modality, like, can you say a little bit more about it?
For sure, yeah. So unity field healing it's an energy and a consciousness based energy modality, really a healing
Mm-hmm.
modality. And it works with an understanding of the human energy system. But what really is unique, I guess, or kind of fundamental to unity field healing as a system is it works at a level of energy that we call the 24th chromosome. And so we need to take a few steps back to
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand that in a meaningful way. So, a lot of people are familiar with their energy anatomy. They'll understand that they have chakras, for example, that are part of the energy system. And there's an etheric body with meridians, like we use in Eastern systems of healing, like acupuncture or acupressure. And that these energy bodies exist as part of our human body. And I'll always say your first energy body is your physical body, because even the physical body is made of
It's
energy.
energy. Yeah, yeah, that's so true.
But in addition, there are other organizing layers of energy. So, an emotional body, a mental body, an etheric body. But in addition to that energy structure, there is a part of energy that is understood to be connected to the genetics of our body. And the way I was shown this was in a vision where what I was shown happening is I'll kind of go briefly through the whole experience because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a meaning in it or value in it.
Yep.
I was shown that I was about to reincarnate. So I was in this vision, I was going to come back to the earth for another trip. And so the way it happened was in my soul or in my higher self, or however we want to conceptualize that, in consciousness, I came to the earth and I was feeling the energy of the earth to decide the details of the incarnation. So, like, would I be born in Canada? Would I be born in Africa? Who would be my mother? Who would be my father? Who would be the social network I would develop? It was like kind of reading the energy and trying to
Mm-hmm.
choose a destination or a body, a soul in a body that would be primed to help me carry out the purpose of the incarnation. So, for example, if it was a lifetime where I was going to be healing a certain kind of a karma, I might pick a very difficult incarnation in order
Mm-hmm.
to have the opportunity to live experiences that then help me heal those experiences. If I was going to bring a certain kind of information, I might choose certain kinds of parents. If I was going to be an
Mm-hmm.
artist or a musician, I might be born in a musical family, to have
Mm-hmm.
the foundation to help me become what my soul wants me to experience in that lifetime. And then what happened next in the vision is in consciousness, I went back into this realm where I was shown my soul in this space that was all kinds of rooms. And behind each room, I knew intuitively it would be like a lifetime. Like if I opened a door and went into a room, I'd be going into one lifetime kind of an
Mm-hmm.
experience. But instead, what happened was I was supposed to stay in the space in the middle, like the atrium area, and energy began flowing out of the different doors. And it was blending into a crystal that looked like a double kind of a pyramid, double octahedron. And it was filling and filling with energy. And then all of a sudden, it had finished filling with energy. And the crystal was attached to a helix that looked like a chain or a pendulum. But when you look at it really carefully, it was a helix, like a DNA molecule.
DNA.
And so the crystal then shot through hyperspace, like on Star Trek, when the ships go really fast. It was like it was flying through the stars and it merged with a crystal and then appeared around a fetus in the mother's belly.
Oh, wow.
So, what I was being shown in the vision was this is how the soul's quantum energy comes to merge with the body when the soul is going to reincarnate in form. And so, this helix looked like a chain. But what happened, I won't go into the details of all the visions because it would take an hour. But what happened was this little chain eventually began to expand and open, and I was shown its DNA double helical
Mm,
nature. And this is a big part of what's expanding through the ascension journey as we as
mm,
humans live this experience and go through this awakening that we speak about. This channel of energy is expanding and opening, and it brings with it access, if you will, to the spiritual side of our life or to our higher self or to our soul. And therefore, energy can flow a lot more freely into the form body, and it can bring with it healing of all kinds of different
mm,
special things. And so the that was the foundation. And then I was introduced to, in another vision, to a light pattern that we call the Unity Field Healing Template. And the template was, it's this interlocking circles that when the template appeared to me in form, it was a dot that became a circle that made more circles and then more smaller circles until it ended up looking like a helix. But the light
mm.
was flowing through the template, and as the light moved, it created this sensation of spinning yin and yang pattern. So, when you watch a car and the wheel goes really fast and it gets to a point of speed where it looks like it's going backwards,
Yeah, yeah.
it was like both of those things were happening at the same
Mm,
time. And the pattern became really, really active. And then I could feel it in my body. And I lived a few experiences with the template that
mhm,
kind of showed me what it was doing. And so this is what really became Unity Field Healing, because what we
mhm,
do in the healing work is we do an energy healing session where we're working in this quantum space, the 24th chromosome. We're working in union with this light pattern that I've
mhm,
described.
mhm,
And there are sessions that are done in a healing context for a person to attune them to this energy. And then you can advance the work to a place where you're bringing intentional purpose into the healing
mm.
session that you're
Yeah.
doing. And then the energy responds to the intention that the person is bringing into the session. And
Mm.
so that's the 5-minute description of Unity Field Healing.
But I remember on your website, John, that you have all the information. If people want to learn
100%.
more about Unity Field Healing, they can take like a seminar with you and find out. Because it's a long process. It didn't happen overnight like this. Like
Correct. Yeah.
you were shown like many layers, and it's what I find about Unity Field Healing is like it's very complex yet very simple.
Yeah.
It's like the when you master complexity, it becomes very very simple,
Yeah.
but it's really profound. So I trained myself as a practitioner. I gave sessions. My partner is trained. He's giving sessions, and we sometimes exchange sessions, and we can feel like it's a very very powerful tool because it goes beyond the mind.
Yeah.
It goes beyond the mind. It's just energy. And you can really feel the waves of energy going through the body. So sometimes people are asking, is it like Reiki? Or they have a hard time like imagining it. It's like, yes and no, not really. But it's you will receive the session on a table, and the practitioner will go around you and he will open the channel so that the energy can move through the DNA and
Yeah.
through the person. Is that
Exactly,
right, John?
100%
Yeah.
correct. And then what happens in the session is the way I kind of experience is it's like we're creating a field or this bubble.
Yeah.
And in that space, we're expanding it through the session. And the magical thing I find about it is when we do things in the 3D world, there's a structure and order. We're like if you're going to do surgery, there's steps to the surgery. You're going to have a very
Yeah.
specific process and outcome. The healing work works in a completely opposite way. It makes this expansion, this field of energy that allows healing to come in from the soul of
Mm,
the
mm,
person with which you're working. And so it's kind of making space for an energetic integration to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's a like a whole spiritual system of oversight and the higher self
Yeah.
of the person that's guiding the process. So the energy that tends to flow or the person is experiencing is very specific to them at this moment on their journey and what it is that they're achieving, in terms of their own
Yeah.
process at this point in
Yeah.
time. And so it's this space of expansion, and what you
Mm-hmm.
say is really profound because it is so simple in the end. Like when you're learning how to do the work, there's a technical part to it, but it really becomes this fluid space where there's
Yeah.
a crystalline space that's made and a quantum space,
Yeah.
if you will, and then the healing takes place within that domain or that space.
Yeah, and like the practitioner learns to hold the space, I guess,
Correct.
to
Exactly.
hold and expand the space so that the
Correct.
healing can happen. And
Correct.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a very profound approach, and I think about your meditations too that you offer every month with the Blue White Syrian Collective, and they're also very profound. Every time I listen to them, I cry, but I cry from reconnection. I don't cry because it's sad. I cry because it remembers me, who I truly am,
Yeah.
and so my partner and I, we often say that's what the foundation of Unity Field Healing is, or your work is like. We remember who we are through this work. You reconnect with your highest being, and it's beyond words, it's beyond explanation. You really have to experience the moment to understand, oh,
Correct.
that's what
Yeah.
they mean when they say that.
Yeah. That's great.
Mm.
And the actually, it's interesting because this year in the transmissions, the whole principle of this year, this is the fifth year that they've been doing the transmissions.
Yeah.
This year is termed the quantum merge, and what they've explained is human beings are going through this energy integration this year that is bringing down whole other levels and layers of the energy system that will be part of our energy anatomy as humanity goes
Mm.
forward. And so it's a whole other level of body integration. It's a whole other level of
Yeah.
bringing down the quantum light. So I just want to share that with you because
Wow, that's
that's where
amazing.
that's where we're heading.
Yeah, that's me and Etienne. It's our date night. Like we do your meditation for
I
date
love it.
night. that's our that's our good time for us is meditation. That's our date night. So so if people want to connect with you, John, like there's the Unity Field Healing website, so unityfieldhealing.com.
Correct. Yeah.
And we can also listen to your transmissions on your YouTube channel.
So I have a YouTube
Um,
channel, and if people, just to orient to the website, there's the
yep,
Unity feeling side of things and the Syrian blue white transmission side of
yeah.
things. So
Oh, yeah, maybe we can explain. Yeah.
the tabs are all at the top. So people can go and read about Unity Field Healing or the sessions, connect with practitioners, etc., through the tabs at
Mm-hmm.
the top. And then there's a section that's specific to the Syrian White Blue Collective. And there's a page, Milan, where people can. I'll explain a little bit the transmissions because it's confusing at the
Yep.
beginning when people do
Yeah,
them.
for sure.
The transmissions are done. It's a 3 hour teaching process. There's like a lecture. There are things we
Like
do it
every month.
exactly
Yep.
Thursday, usually the third Thursday of the month. And there's a teaching. We do a star seeding process together. We do a light language transmission. And then the last hour of the transmission is a meditation that's specific about integrating an aspect of energy around this
Mm.
ascension integration. I make all of those final meditations available just for free. People pay to attend the session, but the meditation I separate and post all of them on the website
Yep.
so anybody can tune into any one of these meditations and
Yeah, it's such a
experience the
wonderful
energy.
gift, John. Like it's such a wonderful gift that it's accessible, free to everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you. And so they're there. And one of the pages under the Syrian tab is the full list of all the transmissions that have ever been
Mm.
given, right up to the most recent one. So
Mm.
people can access them there. And it's the easiest way to get into the YouTube links. That's
Mm. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. And there's also the practitioner training. If you want to become a Unity Field Healing you're a busy man.
a little bit.
so, so if you want to also learn about the training, if you want to be a Unity Field Healing practitioner, or it's also on your website, eh?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was a wonderful conversation, and it just comes to me, John, that we need to have another one. Like, so we'll figure out, time will go by and we'll figure out, but it's just so easy to talk to you. And I hope that people at home really receive little nuggets of information to help them through their ascension process or descension process
Yeah,
through
that's
the
right.
funky twists and turns, because it's not always easy. So I really hope at home that you receive something to help you keep on going, keep on expanding, keep on remembering who you are. So that's my hope for today. And I really want to thank you. It was an amazing first episode. I'm ready for more.
And I just want to say congratulations. I mean, and it's a wonderful
Mm,
initiative and so
thank you.
important and timely. People are really
Mm,
in their soul, they're searching for understanding and support navigating the path. And
mm,
there's so many different streams of information available. When you can really provide something that cuts through with clarity and gives people
mm,
a real heart-to-heart connection with the process,
mm,
it's profound
mm,
and not common. And so I know really what
mm,
you will bring to the table is a
mm.
full heart. Every episode will be just rich
Thank
in
you.
love and heart-based wisdom. So I'm
Mm,
really excited to
thank you.
see where this goes for you and for the
Thank you.
audience too. So thanks from my heart to yours.
Thank you very much, John. So I'll say to the audience, see you next time. And until then, keep on expanding. Thank you. Bye bye.